Welcome to another CJOB 68 exclusive. Inside the mind of George A. Romero, the grandfather of the zombie, the director of Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. Yeah, he knows zombies. Here's your host, John Copsey.
George A. Romero never set out to revolutionize horror films. After graduating from a college commercial art course in 1960, George got together with a group of like-minded people interested in filmmaking and formed a company making industrial training films and beer commercials for the local Pittsburgh market. George, before your entry into feature-length filmmaking, I understand you got your big break working with the guru of children's television programming.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
Actually, my very first job as a filmmaker was for Fred. I mean, Fred was a wonderful guy. What you see is what you get. The guy on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is actually Fred. That's exactly the way he was. He was a wonderful guy and gave a lot of people breaks and a start. Everyone that I know that is working professionally in any kind of electronic media today from Pittsburgh got their start with Fred. I mean, when I was working there, Michael Keaton was a grip on the set. So I shot these little films. Fred had a device called Picture, where the trolley would come by and a movie screen would come down and he'd show you a little movie about how they make light bulbs. Very simplified for young viewers. That was my gig. That was my first professional gig, was shooting those pictures for Fred Rogers. Now, I don't know why Fred would hire a scary guy.
People must not bite other people.
But he did.
Well, you didn't become a scary guy until a little later, is that right?
That's true.
Right. But the elements were percolating even
although had you
that time.
seen me at the time, you might have thought me pretty scary. Long hair.
Well, that was the Summer of Love or thereabouts, I guess.
All that, yeah.
So Latent Image decided to get into the big-time movie business. So what sparked that interest?
No, we just wanted to make a film.
Okay. And what type of film originally did you conceive? Was it a horror film, or did you have grander aspirations, so to speak?
We did. I mean, the first script that I wrote was a very high-minded, sort of Ingmar Bergman-esque thing set in the medieval times. It was a teenage coming-of-age story, and we showed it to people, and everybody said, "What's this?" And we said, well, maybe we should do something a little more commercial.
An experience in shock, more shattering than your strangest nightmare. Night of the Living Dead.
I've always loved horror, and I grew up on EC comic books, all horror films. When I was old enough to go to the movies alone, those were the movies that I went to see. And I had written a little short story. We pulled that out of the file, and one of my partners and I, Jack Russo, sat down and wrote a screenplay for it, and that became Night of the Living Dead.
And were you influenced at all by Richard Matheson's I Am Legend?
Completely. Sure. Richard starts that book with one man left alive. Everyone in the world has become a vampire because of some disease. There's only one man left, thus the title. Vampires used to be legend. Now I am legend because I'm the only human alive. I thought that it was about revolution, and I wanted to do something like that. I didn't directly rip off the idea, but it was certainly strongly inspired by I Am Legend. I couldn't use vampires, so I invented the idea that dead people were coming back to life. I never thought of them as zombies. I never called them zombies in that first film, because to me, back then, zombies were voodoo boys in the Caribbean doing the wet work for Lugosi.
Right.
When people started to write about the film and call them zombies, I just sort of jumped on board.
Prior to that, they were ghouls or just...
Yeah, well, that's what we called them, ghouls, flesh eaters, those things. When you're writing dialogue, what do you say? This thing suddenly takes over the world, right? They're not going to look out there and say, oh, there's zombies around. It's like in the old Godzilla movies, right? This big monster comes over the hill, and all these people say, oh, it's Godzilla. I mean, how do they know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, talk a little bit about the challenges making the film at the time. Getting financing would be an adventure in itself, I guess, for your first independent feature.
Well, it was. We sort of naively said, we can do this. And we had the equipment because we had the commercial company. And we said, okay, we figured out we can do this for pretty low bucks. 10 of us, myself and a couple of my partners in the company and friends of ours, each kicked in $600, which was $6,000. And we thought maybe we could pull it off on that. We were, of course, also naive about that. It was absolutely impossible, but it got us started. We had dailies. We had film that we could show to people. My partners just literally went around and solicited money, and we wound up raising $70,000. That enabled us to finish the film, even though we owed more. It actually cost around $115, but we were able to pay that off when we finally got distribution. Today, it doesn't cost as much to make a film. I mean, because with video and all that, we actually have to shoot on film. A lot of people think I've actually read people that have written about the film that we shot it in 16 millimeter, which is not true. We actually shot it in 35, and that's expensive. You can shoot video till the cows come home, and you're not spending a lot of money. But when you're shooting film, it's tremendously expensive to process it, make a print. Today, you can shoot a film on a lot less. It's harder today, though, to get a film distributed. I mean, I think we were sort of just at the right place at the right time. We were able to get an independent distributor to release the film, and we were lucky in a lot of ways.
It was only recent years that I saw a remastered version and appreciated just how crisp and clean, how much starker the black and white photography really was.
Yeah. I got so used to watching those bad prints that when I first saw the restored version, I said, this is not the right movie.
This is more like the Ingmar Bergman movie I had in mind.
Yeah, it doesn't look funky enough, man.
So how instant was the movie a success? Was it overnight, or did it take some time to develop that following?
Amazingly, it was very successful in its initial release. Now, that release was just drive-ins and neighborhood theaters around the U.S., but it actually returned money. I mean, we made, I think, $700,000 or something, split between 28 investors, so nobody ever got rich. But it actually made money, and we were able to pay off our debts. We came away saying, wow, this is a pretty easy business. Let's do it again, and which we did. But I was worried about being trapped in horror, and we made this little romantic comedy that nobody went to see. We were actually working on our third film when all of a sudden Night of the Living Dead had basically gone away. We thought it was over. It made its initial money for us and had its initial release, and we thought, okay, it's all gone. All of a sudden, it was discovered by the French. There's a magazine called Cahiers du Cinéma who did this big, huge piece about the film, calling it essential American cinema, and which stunned all of us.
Wow.
Never expected anything like that to happen. And then it was invited into the Museum of Modern Art, permanent collection, and all of a sudden it became Night of the Living Dead.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. The unburied dead are coming back to life and seeking human victims. It's hard for us here to believe what we're reporting to you, but it does seem to be a fact.
When we come back, George tells us about the development in his films of his critique of the socio-political landscape, starting with the Vietnam-era disillusionment of the late 1960s.
He planted the seeds of the zombie craze now sweeping the planet. Now he's gained a level of respectability.
You mean it's not seedy anymore? Please don't tell me it's not seedy anymore.
The George A. Romero interview on CJOB 68.